he just managed this rowdy, dangerous crowd, and it was like he was hypnotizing them. All of those things, the flags, the targets, the numbers, are all associated with hypnosis, induction, and mind control. It seems so trivial, doesn't it? Like a television in every home. Some people, a television in every room. It's so powerful, such a powerful medium by the fact of its banality. So for quite a long time, and even today, you'll hear people, standard psychologists, say, well, the thing about hypnotism is, thank goodness, you can't get someone to do something that's against their everyday morality. And it's just not true. You can. And he made up his own symbol, and he called it the, I've got it in a minute there, there's an infinite heart, but this is his symbol, his personal symbol that he created, was these hearts that look like the Star of Ramphun. So Mark Devlin has quite a good interview too with Anne Diamond. So this is his symbol. We'll come back to sigils in a minute, but we always associate sigils with occult, basically demonology. So that's why we call it the Order of the Unified Heart. And he has this sort of limp, sort of nice, kind of a dream order. It's just no hierarchy. It's just a pin for people. And people get tattoos of this. That's on his grave. People get tattoos of it. So what does it mean when you tattoo yourself with the demonic sigil? What does it, and, these are all, I don't know, naive people, innocent people, good-hearted people.
Yeah, it does look very suspect, doesn't it? The eye is a big giveaway in the middle there.
That too, yes.
To what's going on behind this, and I mean, there's clearly Talmudic,
and rings
Kabbalah like influence here in what he created.
Kabbalah, exactly. We haven't used that word Kabbalah. So I forgot to mention, his grandfather, Cohen's grandfather, was a very powerful rabbi in Talmudic teachings. So we can assume Kabbalah, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, one last one, also possibly involved in Janis Joplin's, no, not one, I've got another one, Janis Joplin's death, 1970. So he, the official story is he had an affair with, a couple of one-night stand, I don't know what, sex with Janis Joplin at the Chelsea Hotel in New York in the late 60s. But he bragged that he was the last person to see her alive in the hotel. She died in a hotel in Hollywood from a drug overdose. And he bragged to everyone that he was the last person to see her alive. Now, she's age 27, she's part of that 27 club. And again, I don't know. Some people say she was also alive and put into witness protection. There are so many factions within the, whether you call the Illuminati or the elite, that I don't discount that some of these people have elaborate and public traumatizing murders or suicides, and then, they have to never be seen in public again. But they do. I haven't got the photograph. I don't know if somebody might be able to send it to us, but there was that time early in Trump's first administration where it's a rally, and in the background are like 20 people who have died and aged, who were meant to have died and aged. Janis Joplin, Bob Marley, JFK Jr., Carolyn Bessette, Bob Denver. It's weird. They're aged versions, and they're sort of all being pointed out by Trump. I can't find that photo again, whether it's been scrubbed from the internet, I don't know. But who do you want to have as an assassin? So whether, again, we're looking at this scenario, does Cohen know that does he know that he's assassinating them, or does he think he's assassinating them, or does he think he did, but they went through a Gone with the Wind program, witness protection program? But each time there seems to be this weird hidden connection between him and the moment and their time of death. Last one, I think. I don't know. There might be others turn up. So Jimi Hendrix, great big Isle of Wight concert. That's it was England's Woodstock. So great lineup of people. Hendrix 600,000. Hendrix performed 30th of August. Cohen was on the bill, I mean, pretty low on the bill compared to most of these people, but he performed, did his usual thing, and he performed around 2 a.m. to about 4 a.m., but the crowd was getting really rowdy and kind of chaotic, and he sort of hypnotized the rowdy crowd. And the way why I use that word is because Hendrix used that word. He said to everybody afterwards that he was, he was still around at the concert, and he said, Cohen, he just managed this rowdy, dangerous crowd, and it was like he was hypnotizing them. And he used that word. And Hendrix found, 2 weeks later, dead in his, again, little apartment in London, age 27 Club. So, what's his name? Jim Morrison. Is this their ticket out where they go on to another totally different career, or the agreement is that they'll never show their face in public? What is so one eye again? So there are other people who also claim to have been, we say things like, oh, Hollywood is CIA's Mockingbird program, and the films are propaganda of one sort, or to traumatize us, or all those things. But it does seem like a lot of them have multiple lives as agents. So Chuck Barris, it's another very good film, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, who was this producer and then compere at pretty low level crass TV called The Gong Show, The Dating Game, which is quite well known. He claims that he worked for the CIA and killed 33 people and was under mind control. And he wrote a book about it. The film is, as I said, great, and the film takes it as if it is real. I mean, people around him, of course, and AI, and who could we trust if not AI? AI says, no, Chuck Barris was not a CIA assassin, while he claimed to be, and the CIA has repeatedly denied his claims. But it's a very interesting and very plausible. It's worth watching the show because of the film, because it's about how he was able to appear in places like Berlin, East Berlin, and conduct assassinations. It was really twisted, mixed up character. Again, the son of, I forgot to mention too, that Cohen was had no father figure growing up. His father died when he was, I think, 9. Barris had no father figure growing up. It's one of the things apparently they look for in terms of making people who are particularly help useful as assassins. They have no inner guiding principle. Okay, now we could see where I wanted to get in a lot here, but we'll move fairly quickly. So there's so much written about Hitler. Do we need to discuss? Well, we don't really. We're kind of interested because he had this pathetic attempt at being an artist. But what's never written about, or rarely written about, is the fact that he went to live in Liverpool, UK for 6 months. Just before he moved to Munich, where he was backed by all those bankers to do the putsch and then, become leader of the National Socialist Party. So Hitler was many, many things, but military strategist was not one. He couldn't organize a place to live when his mother's money had run out in Vienna. He couldn't even organize a room to live in. He was not this great, brilliant, again, it's just a figurehead. But his sister-in-law was the one who writes, just saying, yeah, he lived with us for 6 months. And it looks as though during that time he might have undergone some kind of, whether we call it MK Ultra or some kind of intensification of his training. This is some of his early works. He basically painted postcards and tried to sell them. And this is one when he came back from Liverpool. So it's just very odd. So somebody without a face, eyes closed on a bridge, seemingly a self-portrait because he's written AH and the date. So he went through some kind of weird training. I mean, he was obviously identified as extremely useful, comes from, we know that his grandfather was the Rothschild. We know that he was picked out, and we know that he was seemed to be prime for this kind of generational, passing down of demonic possession, call it what you like. He said, he just said this, through his life. He said he heard a voice in his head that was called Providence that told him what to say and do. So he had a dark angel, and he believed that he was under the direct control of Zeus. And we know that the Zeus's symbols of the lightning bolt and the eagle are incredibly important to Nazi imagery. Again, after his stay in Liverpool, he paints this. So the guy who does postcards, I mean, this is to me, this is very like the Marilyn Monroe mirror, multi-mirror thing. And so unlike what else he was doing, that it feels significant. And we're always interested a little bit into how mainstream apologizes for, writes off, dismisses, looks no further at imagery that we find very significant. So this is just somebody from Italy saying it's a piece of crap painting, desperate man, says about his psyche, you don't see greatness but misery, it's a wretched soul. But you think, is it a bit more than that? Are these handlers? Are these, here's some kind of prison system where mirrors are used to, convert his mind to, railroad his mind. Yeah, so that mirror thing. So one thing he was very, very good at was this bizarre oratory style. So while, the speeches are inflammatory, they do contain things like we must kill all the Jews and, and all of this and, make Germany great again. But his style, these, he often had photographs, or they were commissioned, Goebbels commissioned photographs off him to make him appear this strong character. But if you see him talk, it's a man possessed. It's absolutely charismatic speaker. And what he's saying is not that significant, not really, but the presence, this overshadowing, he's channeling basically. And I think that's why he was chosen out of relative obscurity, even though, we do know that he had sexual relationships with his mother, where he had a long sexual relationship with his niece, his much younger niece. That's just mainstream, pretty mainstream. So again, yet generational abuse, and who knows what else was going on, what other occult activities are going on. He certainly became increasingly involved in the occult. So he's seen as very important, but I do not think he's the mastermind that we're supposed to. I mean, it's like the patsy, isn't it? It puts a stop to any further investigation. So who were the people behind it? Who were the bankers? What did the Tula Society have to do with that? So the Tula Society sponsored him, and then eventually, this was, we won't go into it, but there's the Vril Damen, who are the ones who channeled the information about the Nazi bell. We call them UFOs, but I think they're just advanced technology of flying machines, but through demonic connection. And, they're very big on their seances, on their sex magic. Hess was huge in all of that. So this is where he's using a kind of mind control, isn't he? So it's not just being channeling and being possessed by a dark entity, but the admiration people felt. The German people are not all bad, and yet look at the way they're looking at him. They look at the intensity. This is a man, as I said, who couldn't organize a place for himself to live. He was, on a day-to-day basis, he was a big amphetamine addict later in life and so on, but he was not the brains. Another MK Ultra subject was Sirhan, who ostensibly was the shooter, seemingly the patsy for the shooting of Robert F. Kennedy in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. Sirhan said that he had no memory of doing that, absolutely none. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is now in American politics, has been quite vocal in trying to get him released from prison, because he says that it looks as though a hypnotist called Dr. William Joseph Bryan hypnotized him. So yes, he was the patsy, and yes, the patsy was under hypnosis. And he may have thought at the time, what am I doing with this gun in my hand? And everybody around him said, well, you just killed Robert F. Kennedy. But actually, the shot came from a different direction that killed Kennedy. So they have a front face to blame, and then end of story. And there's just a very weird connections with. So this is 1968, but Dr. William Joseph Bryan, the hypnotist, was a consultant on the film The Manchurian Candidate. And
interesting.
The director of the film The Manchurian Candidate was not only at the Ambassador Hotel when this event happened. Kennedy was staying at his house in Los Angeles. This director drove him to the Ambassador Hotel, and at the Ambassador Hotel, he brushed past Sirhan. Like, everybody saw it and noticed it. It's in some photographs. So there's really weird connections with that film, with these patsies of the time, Oswald, Sirhan. And coincidentally, another figure that we know from, like Ewan Cameron, Dr. Jolyon West is another psychiatrist who used hypnosis and drugs. And coincidentally, he was the court psychiatrist for all of these serial killers, which means that after the event of Sirhan apparently doing the shooting, or Ruby, shooting Oswald, he would take them privately and hypnotize them, basically. So it's just odd that each time, even Timothy McVeigh, even as recent as that. I don't know. Look, I just think, Manson they say he was a scrawny, hopeless, shuffling, numbbrain before he learnt hypnosis. I mean, stuff was done to him for sure, high doses of LSD, but he was able to hypnotize people really well, which is why all of those women carried out the Sharon Tate murder, other activities. They still, swore he was like this fantastic godlike leader. Again, hypnosis being used on multiple versions. And also Sirhan attended Manly P. Hall's lectures in Los Angeles. So Manly P. Hall, sort of Freemason to the stars. So very dark figure. And I think the more you read about him, even though there are admirers, my goodness, there are admirers of what he has to write and his oratory, etc., he just looks like a charlatan in the way that Blavatsky was. Gathered together lots of knowledge, knew how to work on people, knew how to influence people. Really powerful, influential figure to this day. And yeah, a master in hypnosis. So famously, when they were releasing it was just a pretty 2-bit horror film, I think, Black Friday, for the scenes where Bela Lugosi was going to, do the scene in the film where he does these murders, but Hall hypnotized him for real, and Lugosi said, "Don't ever do that to me again. Don't ever." So it was just a kind of like openly admitting that he has very powerful hypnosis and NLP skills. The book was remade. The film was remade. That might be the version people see, the one with Denzel Washington. And okay, I'll just want to mention that because these three people, there are obviously people in Hollywood have different roles. These three people are known for international espionage, I think. So I let people do more research than I can show you here. But when we see people promoted to this degree, and especially in certain roles, they are the hero of America, it seems to be a great cover for what they might elsewhere be doing. So here he is on the left. I'll just point out that's George magazine. That was a magazine that was around, especially in the 90s, but it was started by JFK Jr. So it was seemingly a political magazine, a bit of a, thinking person's gossip magazine. Denzel Washington. Okay, come back. Now we come back to the real JFK Jr. I told you this was going in lots of weird directions, but I really have a reason why I'm covering a lot of ground for this. So Quigley, David Quigley, his name, was changed to, says that's him in the photograph that's his father. And he was replaced at age 9 by a kind of a mobster connection, organised crime. And he used to, even at that age, he sometimes had a body double. I think sometimes they would just even know that they didn't want the child to be in dangerous situation. So he was raised with another little boy. And that other little boy was called by the mafia John, but he was a counterfeit. But this David Quigley grew up in poverty. He was basically, let's go back a bit. He was, after the Kennedy assassination, he was taken with his mother Jackie to Scorpios Island, which is another Greek island, private island. Islands keep coming up in Mediterranean. And there he is in a rough photo. So there's a few other people on that island. There's Jackie, there's David Quigley, the person we now, whose name was changed to David Quigley. There's his lookalike. And he remembers Denzel Washington. How bizarre.
That is bizarre.
He's a very shy, if you listen to interviews with him, again, it's very plausible. He's a very broken person. He's, he's gone through a big alcoholic phase, etc. He looks to me way more like JFK. That's JFK, the two in the middle, and that's Quigley on the left. And the one that we call John, the one that the world knew as John F. Kennedy, looks much less like Kennedy than this little boy did, this David Quigley. So this swapping out. So this John and the mobsters got all of that money. They were really wealthy, the Kennedy family, when JFK died. So the one that we know of as JFK Jr., the one called John, his real name is, you can either it's George Onassis. Sometimes it's given as Homero, so the Greek name for Homer, but George was his common name, George Onassis. Remember the magazine he started called George? And we know that, again, they're signalling. We know that in theory, it's supposed to be about George Washington. His real parents are almost certainly Maria Callas and Onassis, who were in relationship. The dates match up at the time when George Onassis, John was conceived. Maria Callas's father's name was George. I mean, big deal. But these small details add up. So they were put together, Callas and Onassis, by Maxwell. I don't know whether that's related to the Maxwell family. I could possibly be. Who was a society gossip, basically a provider, a sort of a pimp, if you will, a society pimp for getting wealthy people together, often for more than just sex, to have relationships. Lots and lots of famous people MK Ultra'd, we think. And lots of them end up in mugshots, which sort of goes to show you that if they ever try to leave, they're given many, many warnings and in many, many ways not to continue. And all of these people, have really trouble. I mean, certainly Mick Jagger, absolutely, has had a lifelong MK Ultra connection. Frank Sinatra, who was in that film, Manchurian Candidate, producer of that film, collected with the mob, very, very powerful, Las Vegas scene, close with the Kennedys. This is way before he became famous, was arrested in 1938, charged with seduction and adultery for a crime that would not be a crime today. I mean, it's sad, but he had an affair with a married woman who then accused him of breaking it off, breaking a promise that he was going to marry her. But still, this is a famous mugshot, and you'll see this mugshot in things like The Sopranos. Like, it's the mob just loves this. He's a sort of like, he's a criminal like one of them. So William J. Bryan, the programmer of Sirhan, the consulting psychiatrist for all of these, patsies or lone assassins. And here in this film, Sinatra is seen as the D program, which is ironic. I know this is a bit of a long shot, but I've come across this more than once. Again, these lookalikes. So Sinatra looked a lot like the old Pope Francis. So I remember Francis Sinatra, Pope Francis. Argentina, where did he come from? Argentina, that's him on the right with Hitler in Argentina. We don't know. That's a bit obscure, but he definitely has a look like. Could he have been, Pope Francis? His mainstream story is that his parents were Italian immigrants. So isn't that odd that this would
Very
be,
odd.
there's so, that somebody's just old blue eyes, the crooner, the singer, the romantic actor, that, make women swoon. These people are disgusting. These people are horrific. And I just wanted to put it together, but he did have a connection with Argentina through Carlos Gardel. It's a name that probably doesn't mean anything to us, but he was huge in Argentina, in South America. And Gardel is somebody who gave Sinatra his first break, and he died mysteriously in a plane crash. But I'm just saying he had this weird connection already with Argentina, with that may have meant that, again, confirms this Pope Francis business. Okay, now we're coming back to why do I do all this as a background for Jasper Johns? So I don't have a sense that somebody might provide this. Was he involved in this or that? What did he do? I only want to kind of convince, or at least put down the possibility that he had activities outside his painting that he was being used for. We don't know them. Maybe we'll find them out. Maybe we won't. The thing that annoys us, doesn't it, Paul, is that they know what these people are used for. We're just scrambling around in the dark, aren't we? Putting two and two together, sharpening our research skills, this weapon of the air, which is the internet, has been a great boon for us. But they know, they could just tell us the real history of the world, for example. Anyway, remembering, so go back to Jasper Johns, all of those things, the flags, the targets, the numbers, are all associated with hypnosis, induction, and mind control. So quick background on Johns. He, as I said, he came from a broken home. He never had a stable childhood. He was sent from relative to relative, spent some time, I think, in orphanages, grandparents, and was got a really miserable childhood again, which often sets people up for being prime targets to have early on experimentation. Connected pretty quickly with Rauschenberg and the people from Black Mountain College, which is definitely a CIA setup. And he talks about it like this when he was still 24. One night I dreamed I painted a large American flag, and the next morning I got up, went out, and bought the materials to begin it. Came from a dream. All right, not so unusual, of course. But if we're thinking there's a little bit more, where do dreams come from? Most of us find that, like I keep saying this, that imagination comes from something. Imagination comes from something that we don't know. We don't know we know. Things the mind already knows, but that can't bring to the foreground. He doesn't have any other reason for that. He doesn't say because American flag is just the emblem of good or anything. But it's both a 3D object and a flat emblem. This is what was sort of seemingly breakthrough, because he used this encaustic, which is a wax material mounted on collage and fabric. You can see some newsprint underneath. So it was quite a radical thing to do. But I mean, really, really. So that's him being, showing one of his paintings. It's no more about a flag than it's about a brushstroke or about colour or about physicality of paint. So remembering that's what the abstract expressionists said. Our art is about art. The painting is about the paint. Well, that's sounds a bit lame, but that's what he's trying to convey. So 3 flags, these are worth millions. And we know that, I mean, I find it disturbing now, and again, I'm older than you, but I remember a time when even in the 70s, even after the Vietnam War, there was this pro-American flag. The American flag was cool. It was Uncle Sam, baby. It was, clothing. Even in Australia, what do we do with American clothing? Let alone even today, and the whole, I have to say, the patriotism of flags, it disturbs me. But this is so pushed on us. I think it's a trigger, not just a symbol. It's more immediate than that.
Mm.
So sometimes he's painted them and whited out, which is interesting, almost as if, it's available but not available. Um, Meteoric rise in success. So one small work in a one work in a small exhibition, picked up by Leo Castelli, incredible, kingmaker in the art world. Um, a solo exhibition, monumental success, written up in art news, critical acclaim, already lots of, Museum of Modern Art bought 3 paintings, unheard of for a young unknown artist. Massive success. And we always think, alarm bell, we'll just look into this. 1958, he visited Duchamp's work at the Philadelphia Museum, and he actually visited Duchamp, and Duchamp then visited his studio. Now, Duchamp, who was this, again, this mega hero of an earlier era, but, the whole ready-mades, etc., living in New York, Frenchman living in New York, takes it upon himself to go and visit Jasper Johns' little crummy little studio. They just doesn't sound coincidental. Well, that's him with Leo Castelli at, as I said, the kingmaker, the Castelli. So just going back a bit. So he was born 1930, and from the age of 3, really just dislocated childhood. I was a good guest. I was always a guest. So pretty sad childhood, moved about. Conscripted in 1951, the time of the Korea War, we talked about. Served 2 years in Fort Jackson, but also in Japan. And this is where I think there's some heavy duty hypnosis and MK Ultra going on. It would be in Japan. Remember I said the CIA was at that stage pretty respectful of not doing their experiments on American soil. That was their get out of jail free card, so it didn't happen in the US. Had a long connection with Japan. So he kept on going back there. He's a huge fan of spy models. And here, this is pretty young and big deal. I mean, she's just at somebody else's exhibition, but where there's an American flag, 1964, with, this figure it's kind of the classic spy Bond. And he's you think, oh, he's just playing. But he loves spy novels. So Jolyon West was actually stationed close to where Jasper Johns was stationed. I'm only guessing here, stationed at Fort Jackson. So there may have been some MK Ultra happening on CIA, by the CIA on American soil. So he loved his spy novels and The Spy That Came In From the Cold. And I'm just mentioning this one because it's in one scene, a spy and his lover are shot. And as they attempt to climb over the wall, this is the major sort of, denouement in the book. And then he illustrates it, The Watchman. So from the, and he talked about, again, at the time when he was writing notes, he did less and less as he got older. The watchman falls into the trap of looking. The spy is a different person. The spy must be ready to move, must be aware, entrances and exits. The spy must remember himself. The spy designs himself to be overlooked. I think that's not just somebody getting into the character of the novel. That's just a very kind of like internalized kind of connecting with a spy figure or a espionage figure.
Yeah.
He was close friends with Michael Crichton. So, again, a spy novelist, amongst other things. And Crichton wrote in 1977 a monograph on Jasper Johns. But Crichton is a very interesting figure. And we're just reminding us that there's a long list of undercover intelligence operatives, MI6, CIA, OSS, who went on to write, and often to write novels, spy novels. So hanging out with these people, also seems to like a bit of art. But we now know that Fleming, they're involved. Fleming was involved in the setting up of the CIA, the American CIA. He was set up in the kind of the, what would you call it, the rules of order at the beginning. I mean, some really weird connections. Crichton, very prolific novelist, and Jurassic Park, Andromeda strain, sci-fi, inducted into Phi Beta Kappa, the same as a lot of these other bigwigs and famous names who go on to write, have these public lives that seem to have nothing to do with Spidem. When he, also wrote, he's really successful, over 2 million copies of his sci-fi. And a lot of his books are anti-science, so about the Andromeda strain, about a disease getting loose and decimating the world population. Westworld, automatons. And so, how we also think, well, oh, yes, but they're critical of these things. They must be on the good side. It just doesn't work like that. We know that now. So a series like The Sopranos, you say, oh, well, it just shows that the mobsters, the mafia get their comeuppance in the end. Well, not really. All that excitement on the way. In the end, everyone wants to you have the freedom and lifestyle of these characters. So as much as he's putting these things out seemingly as warnings, we're also getting charged up by the excitement of these potential disasters for humanity. And Terminal Man, very early, this is kind of before he got really close with Jasper Johns, is about a computer scientist with implants. So that one seems to be awfully prescient, since that was like 50 years ago, and was also, began with CIA experiments, which by that time would have been pretty quietly constructed. So how he knew about these things, how all of those spy novelists knew about the ins and outs of what is it like to, of course they glamorize it, but they know a lot of the details. So Crichton talks about how, as a spy working for the CIA, you have to show the person you're taking around, that you're wanting to get information from, you make sure you can show them. You've got to know where the child brothels are. Absolutely no morality about things like that. So you make sure you take them to the child brothels if that's what they want. So other books about hypnosis, other spy novels. There's a famous one, the Ipcress Files. So similar time period, 62 to Manchurian Candidate. Also quite a good film about a conditioned reflex under stress. And for them, the triggers are to do with noises and dark box. We now know the triggers can be anything. They can be someone brushing against someone. It can be a phone call. It can be a word or a phrase spoken. The triggers can be like something from the Catcher in the Rye. So Esther Brooks, working in New York, I can hypnotize a man without his consent, and to committing treason against the United States. So for quite a long time, and even today, you'll hear people, standard psychologists, say, well, the thing about hypnotism is, thank goodness, you can't get someone to do something that's against their everyday morality. And it's just not true. You can.
Where did they get that idea from?
Yeah. Nice thought, isn't it? But yeah. So, okay, the standard hypnosis, whether this is part of an induction, quite likely, the spinning circles and there's something always about vision, isn't there, with hypnosis that, we don't, if we're not, involved in this, we don't necessarily know how it's always used. But Jasper Johns is showing that somehow, these targets. And again, these lame, art critics writing, he's just elevating mundane objects to the status of high art. So, the pop art things with abstract expressionism thrown in. And you just think, that's really, really weird, these targets, concentric circles. At the time, this is a photograph by Ouija, the photographer Arthur Felick, a fantastic, really quite an amazing kind of hit the streets sort of film noir kind of photographer. But he knew enough. Ouija was very smart. They called him Ouija because he always seemed to, he had a police radio and he could always be at the scene of a crime in New York, a car accident or a crime, even almost before the police got there, let alone any other journalists. But he knew enough to photograph Alan Dulles in 1961 like this. So something, resembling a brainwashing or a hypnotic spiral. So Jasper Johns' target again, that also looks like an eye, bullseye, focusing, which is often what we do. Our television focuses us, of course. So, You know, there are other levels to this. And there's William Bryan, the person who was the consulting hypnotist on Manchurian Candidate, and who was also uh, um, involved in all of those, you know, debriefing all of those patsy shooters, public shooters. So lots of films, they always show these spirals, I mean, and rings. I wouldn't necessarily think that's about hypnosis, but apparently it is. You know, I mean, we've come to think that's a shorthand now. Spirals, rings must be hypnosis, but and eyes, you know, and the Life magazine, hypnosis is going to cure all mental ills. Sorry for the low resolution, but the use of hypnosis to cure mental ills. Yeah, right. I don't think anybody was using it for good. And then these get very odd. So this hypnotized, you know, hypnosis connected circles. And then at the top, there are these weird body parts. And, you know, the standard reading by somebody, you know, an art critic would be that, oh, this is about him being homosexual in the time when he had to hide his homosexuality. He wasn't, by the way. He had relationship with men and women, lots of women, actually. But as a closeted gay man in the South, he had to hide his sexuality. I think it's more like disembodied voices, or, you know, the out-of-body experience that people talk about sometimes when they're hypnotized and released from their physical body. They're standing outside themselves. So the thing that keeps coming back to me is what he said, it's things the mind already knows. So, you know, could be target practice, gives me room to work on other levels. I don't think he's in control of why he did that, these imagery. But Esther Brooks did, you know, who was the one who, you know, was near Fort Meade, said people were forced to listen to the same message for 16 hours a day, messages piped into a loudspeaker in each room, then into speakers on their pillows, and finally into earphones. The messages would appear to come within your head. So, you know, what we would now probably call voice of God, or, you know, voices in the head, synthetic telepathy, VTK technology, of course, much more sophisticated 30 years later. So again, this kind of sound, the sound of piano, these numbers, tones. I mean, I think like any good artist, in the sense that he's conveying something that he's not fully consciously aware of, but is bringing out into the world. And therefore that is bringing something new into the world. But we haven't really got time to look at the basis for hypnosis. This is Freud's teacher, Charcot in Paris, who was a Martinist, Svengali, that's, you know, based on a book by George du Maurier. So hypnosis was used a lot, including in military circles, in ways that are not fully public. I mean, this is meant to be just fancy fun, that you can make someone, you know, go into a stiff sleep and not know, and literally support themselves, you know, do acts that would seem physically impossible under hypnosis. And Duchamp has a weird relationship with hypnosis. So I remember I said that Duchamp visited Johns. They sort of felt he was sort of something in common with him. It's not just this ready-made stuff. So another one of these multiple images, like we saw with Marilyn Monroe and Hitler. And a lot of these things that seems that so Johns had a profound impact on Duchamp. So, okay, this bicycle wheel, it was very into spirals and circles. These are Duchamp works, most of which would probably have been forgotten if he hadn't connected back with. But he remade a lot. After meeting up with Jasper Johns, he remade a lot of these kinetic sculptures, these spirals.
Interesting.
It's almost as though he had had something in childhood or youth and was also coming to grips with that. Lots in common with each other, even though you'd think they have nothing. They come from different worlds and different sensibilities. But there's a kind of a mirroring. And then Jasper Johns comes out with something like, this is about a broom, you know, it's like broom. And then Duchamp goes and remakes his work called In Advance of the Broken Arm.
Hmm.
And what they mean, what they actually say, look, we could spend quite a lot of time and ruminate, but we're not going to now. But I don't think it's easy to make sense of Jasper Johns' work. Duchamp's magazine cover for Minotaur magazine, 1934. Remember the surrealist magazine Minotaur? Duchamp wrote a relief, Johns' targets. And now numbers. What's all this numbers business? Why was Jasper Johns? They're not, I mean, sometimes they're consecutive, but other times they're random. So, he did many of these, repeated these works, 11 characters the row. They're not the same up and down. Numbers on top of one another, numbers that are hard to locate. Again, what are these numbers? It's not about mathematical use of numbers. It's something else. And this is where I think it relates to the countdown, the film leader countdown, which we've all seen, still used today in some ways, and it's not with digital so much, but the countdown, and then there's a bip and then the film starts. And we know that even in mainstream hypnosis, how to hypnotize your friends, how to heal, quit smoking with my hypnosis method. Teaching hypnosis is normally done with numbers, counting down numbers. If you've ever had surgery, you know that's also what they'll ask you to do, is to focus on the numbers, drift off to sleep, and then the anesthetic kicks in.
Yeah, count backwards from 20 is usually the usual.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then this was just a funny one I just saw. I think this person was being serious. They say, why do some movies start with the big rotating circle and count down? And sometimes after number one, there's a woman in there. What is her purpose? And I think they're being serious, that they're talking about this is from a long time ago. So it's copied from a book where somebody is saying they saw an image, so a subliminal. So we know that subliminals were quite commonly used in the 60s and then kind of banned, in advertising. But have they been? Are they still inserting a 25th frame that we can't see, but our unconscious does?
I'd say it's superliminal now. They just put it in front of your face. They don't have to hide it anymore. Whatever they were trying to subtly influence people with. Like in the past, they would say, they would subliminally put sex in things very quickly, or the word sex quickly would flash on the screen or something, because sex sells.
Or even a death's head. Yeah, sometimes the death drive too, the death's head.
But now that's just out in the open, so it's not really why subliminally hide it in a frame, because it's not really taboo
it's everywhere.
Anymore,
It's so pervasive. Which we can't escape those imageries. So you won't be old enough to remember the early Sesame Street, but you probably, I haven't kept up, but they're probably something like that now. But at the beginning, it was this countdown, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it would be repeated. So, okay, that's a learning thing. It's really clear that Sesame Street and the Muppets, I hate to break it to people, are connected with MK Ultra. And anyway, they can't go into all of that now, but is it putting children into a trance? Why do they always show things like spies, devils, magicians, dragons, pentagrams, serpents, spiders, and 666 in between? And this is one, I think can you see this but not hear it?
I can see it.
It's just super fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now,
I think I've seen this.
Yes. So in one way you think, okay, they're counting up. So whereas, in hypnosis, it's counting down, or anesthetics counting down. And I don't know. What came to my mind, again, you know how you grasp at these things just to test them out as ideas. Is it to kind of to keep people asleep? So, the Ruz Dizdar research, he says that there are thousands upon millions of MK Ultra sleeper agents out there. And we can believe that since there was all that military activity of Korean War, Vietnam War, there was a lot of ex-military people, prisoners and so on, but especially military people who were released back into society who'd had MK Ultra training, who could be triggered to be what does he call them? It's the dark awakening, black awakening, is it? The, chaos agents.
I think that's what he calls
So
it, the Black Awakening, yeah.
yeah. So is this the opposite? Is like keeping people subdued until we're ready to call on them? I don't know. There's something so pointed about it. Like it's not random. Especially when you hear the music
Mm.
and how kind of hypnotic it is. The other thing is, again, you might not remember when television went off at midnight and there'd be this countdown followed by the American flag, the Star Spangled Banner music would come up and a blip test pattern. And then
Mm.
either the test pattern, I think would usually stay on for a while. It might have gone out and just gone black. So again, it's kind of like this entrainment to keep people subdued. But really, again, where did, this was probably before Johns's, I mean, he made these works before this came up, before television, but they seem
Mm.
to relate to exactly what he was doing television-wise.
Is it simply
So,
repetition? So the lines of the flag is
yeah.
you count the
Ah,
lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
yeah,
and then the other
yeah,
stars to count as well, and it's repetitive
yeah,
pattern.
right.
And is it just
Yeah, that's
staring at it?
interesting.
Is the idea that if you stare at it long enough, it just becomes form? It just becomes a
Yeah.
blur or a repeat pattern
I've
of
never thought
something
about
that.
that. It is the flag with the most counting opportunities, isn't it? The
Yeah,
American
sure.
flag.
And you were reminded
Like,
there as well, the countdowns, the introduction to any news show, especially like the BBC, let's say, BBC News or something in the UK, they have this opening. And
yeah,
it gets more
yeah,
intense and more intense, and then
yeah,
the imagery on the screen is like a countdown with like
yeah,
swirls, circles,
yeah.
particularly, going
Ah,
round and round, and it is exactly like a priming your brain ready for the next download of propaganda. You know what I
right.
mean? It's kind of
Yeah, yes.
getting you in that
It's
trance-like state, ready
yeah, and
for
it's
the
almost
latest
like,
download.
the clicker with the dog too, isn't it? Like, listen, listen, click, listen to me,
Yeah,
pay
yeah,
attention.
yeah. But
Put this
what
in
your take
deeply.
was interesting there, though. The idea that maybe it's to keep people subdued,
Yeah.
and
Or at
now
least, and
maybe.
maybe during that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it's also so they won't get triggered or something like so things are going to be said or shown or something. I don't know, but maybe it's
Yeah.
also a case of if that becomes like a daily routine and it keeps you locked into a untriggered state, let's say, or a docile state. What would be said for a generation that no longer watches that kind of stuff? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and switches to social media, turning off the TV.
Hmm.
Maybe the restrainer's off. Maybe I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's true.
Yeah.
Or it's moved on. So there's, if
Mm.
say there was 20 years of programming and military, MK Ultra full on, and then the next 20 years from 70s onwards is television. The programming is now in every home. We
Mm.
sign up for it. And now there's another version, which is we're all entrained as soon as we pay stupid amounts of money for these streaming services. We're invested
Mm.
in them by consent, aren't we? So yeah, the entrainment. And also, who knows about hidden signals? We don't know, do we?
Well,
The kind of,
exactly. Yeah, I do know.
mm,
I think television doesn't have to be showing you anything, but it does emit a frequency which affects your vision. If
mm,
you're staring at a TV screen, even if the image is black, it's still emitting a light and a frequency that puts your
mm,
brain into. I think it's like a. Is it a
yeah,
theta wave state or or a beta
yeah.
wave state? I can't remember the specific right now. I'll do some research and I'll
It's.
slap it on the screen.
I think it's deep, even theta. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it
and
puts
then
you
and
in
then
a state, of suggestibility, basically. That's what it
yes,
is. Yeah.
and it makes me very sleepy. I get very tired eyes if I watch something, and it's not.
I
I'm not
used to,
tired. I just it's.
I remember
Mm,
that feeling of torpor you get when the TV's on in the
yeah.
background. I used to get it when I was a child. My dad would watch television or whatever it was, and I'd fall asleep on the sofa to the TV in the background. And it was distinctly because of the TV in the background. It's an odd
Mm,
thing. It has detrimental effects on the brain. They recommend children do not see a screen until they're at least
right.
two, and
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
then, you
Great.
wouldn't recommend putting them in front of a television because it significantly impacts development. Like it
Yeah.
significantly impacts as well. It makes them dumb. It stops them from being able to
Wow.
think, and they don't learn things. And you have to think about
Yes.
the
Yes. It
detriments of
changes.
television. Think about what it does to us. Like people who watch
Mm,
TV. I mean, when you actually look at somebody watching television, what they're doing is they're sitting still and staring at a box. They're not actually doing anything. Okay.
No, passivity.
Yeah, exactly. The time gets wasted and they sat there and did nothing. And that's exactly what, but the TV gives this illusion that I did something with my day. You know, I watched and lived the lives of these characters and everything, and I learned something, or so you think, but you forget everything. Like it becomes a memory hole into the subconscious, whatever you did, you know. And that's so you think you know, you watched a series and you'll be watching the whole thing again in a month's time, you know, like binge watching Friends again for the 20th time in your life, or The Office, or whatever it is, you know. But really, you're not actually, you're wasting your life, is what you're doing, or at least
and yet
being indoctrinated.
Sorry. So it seems so trivial, doesn't it? Like a television in every home. Some people a television in every room. It's no biggie. It's when you're standing at the bank queue or anywhere, you can't, you know, it's so powerful. It's such a powerful medium by the fact of its banality.
Absolutely.
So on the left, I've been fairly clunky at, but we know about that, this kind of thing. I'll come back to that in a minute. So, all right, just this idea of signaling. So just the day before the church shooting, this is recent church shooting in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz said, pizza, cheese, curd, tacos. And he said it 9 times, Minnesota shell slingshot. So this, I think, was a programming of a particular individual, maybe more than one, through television to do whatever he was trained to do. And this was the guy. So just again, these rantings and ramblings, and you say, oh, it's just mental illness. But if you read closely, it's things like, you know, being controlled and being tested. My higher mind is watching me. Higher force is controlling me. I mean, like Jerry Mazinski say, well, maybe we listen to what they're saying, not just say it's random hallucinations. And again, this the same figure. So he doodled these demonic, literally, like we were talking to Picasso about the Minotaur or the demonic Moloch figure. And his symbol, I want to just draw attention to. So that's his symbol, top left, that he used to draw. And I think, especially, we know Brian from Demon Erase, and is very, very clear, very direct about it. Demons, bro, the sigils are the signatures of demons. They are their calling, you know, that is their signature. They don't use names, or the names in the way that we perhaps think of them. But the sigils are very often these infinity symbols, or symbols that are, if not done with one pen movement, like with two, but they circularize. They circulate. There's something about infinity. On the bottom left is our ABC TV. That's the public broadcasting station in Australia. And there's not normally those lines between those, you know, it normally is a symbol that you can trace with your finger. That's up there. We've got the symbol of Leviathan top in the middle on the right. We've got Lucifer, the Leonard Cohen symbol, the 2 hearts. There's the Ukraine symbol there, which is a symbol for Poseidon, or one of, or Poseidon's trident. I don't know how to say it. Of course, the Nazi symbols. We forget actually that most of the Nazi symbols are in a circle. Again, this infinity reference. So usually we just think of the swastika. It's a swastika in a circle. And the flag that we've come to know as the Israeli flag, just want to remind people that when Israel was set up, 1947, they promised the people that they could choose their flag, new country, new flag, new life. And it was unanimous, I mean, almost unanimously, overwhelmingly voted for the Jewish menorah. They really wanted the menorah, and that was just overruled. No, you're getting the Star of Ramphon. So I think there's this link with those. And similarly, like you've already mentioned it too, but it's the traumatizing effect can sometimes be read in the Schumann resonance. You know, people will sometimes look at this from the New Age and say, oh, is that lovely? The Schumann resonance was so high. People are raising their vibrations the day after a mass shooting or the day after Charlie Kirk's shooting. This is the day after Charlie Kirk's shooting, and it was a ripple of trauma or negative emotions, nastiness. That's high, that's not high vibration in a sense. That's intense vibration.
I think we all felt that one. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we were just talking about it, and it's still quite fresh while we're recording.
I missed most of it. Yeah.
I feel like this event, if anything, has traumatized the masses. If anything,
and that's its main intention, I think. Yeah, and divide and trauma, and this smells bad too. I caught a little bit what you're saying too. There's definitely questions to be asked, aren't there? So.
There are, but I don't have answers, unfortunately. And I'm not one to really speculate too hard without more evidence. I tend to wait a long time before making an analysis of like these current events, sort of situations. But I have observed myself firsthand that this is affecting people in ways I wouldn't expect people to be affected by. Like that. Like everyone's felt this one. Anyone and everybody I know of has felt this one, and I think it's because they're seeing death so blatantly on the screens, bloody, gory, brutal, instantaneous
my goodness.
death, like, and it's not
that's right. We did
anywhere.
People didn't see the Zapruder film, even if that was faked and cut and edited, but they didn't see the shooting of Kennedy like that. I mean, it's such a different world we live in, where people will show it from multiple angles. It's like a Bonnie and Clyde movie. We'll see it multiple angles. I was just going to say, I'll throw it out there for what it's worth. So the figure Val Thor, again, you don't know what you think about him. I'm not sure what I think about him, but he's been involved in what they call the silent war from 2018. 2018 onwards. So the dumbs and the tunnels, etc. So look, let's just say it may be somebody from outside our particular realm, the world beyond the ice wall, however you want to look at it, outside of our dimension. But he's been fighting an underground. The next day he wrote Charlie Kirk is in witness protection, which would fit with the way his wife, the way how quickly the body was not sent to a coroner, was prepared for burial within 24 hours, on display. She's saying goodbye and giving speeches the next day. It's a little bit quick. So anyway, more questions than we can, as you say, answer right now. So just remembering that this number business relates to also this sense of where you're shown, it's conflicting information in the brain. So not just the countdown, but in this case, it's an effect called the Stroop effect. So you're looking at red, but it's painted yellow. You're looking at green, but it's painted black. And it's an internal conflict because one side of our brain, this is simplified, but the right side of the brain sees the yellow, and the left one has to find the word red. So it's an internal conflict. And they do use this in psychology experiments and also to kind of mess with people, because the brain momentarily, for everybody, gets momentarily, there's an inner struggle. It doesn't sit easily. And he did this a lot too. So red, yellow. So he's had some kind of psych, not just hypnosis, but psych experiments, synthetic telepathy, Stroop effect. So what we sort of know, and again, we don't know if this is still true, but we were told that for post-hypnotics, that it only lasts, it's not permanent, and it will need reinvigorating, which adds then to why there seems to be a hypnotist at the site, so that there's not just Oswald, but someone hypnotizing Oswald. There's not just Mark David Chapman, but possibly Leonard Cohen hypnotizing Mark David Chapman, and then also happening perhaps to have a gun to make sure the job is done if he messes up. But this idea that hypnosis has to be retouched. So he continues. So this is now 1982. He's still doing these things with figures coming out of the painting and sadness to do with that, kind of Cold War story. But increasingly he's doing them with dark figures. Now, he says, again, doesn't say much about his artwork, but he says it's based on, somebody saying, said that they told him it's based on his own shadow in the bathroom of his home. I mean, it looks a very fractured, very odd thing. But look, not so unusual compared to other paintings. But then they'll write saying, and in a painting like this, we can see the influences of Picasso, Dürer, Holbein, Cézanne. I mean, get a grip, don't you think? Like,
Hmm.
it's not, I mean, this is, I'm talking about serious critics who write so much about his work. Age 88, he's now started to draw this figure over and over.
Oh,
Okay, so you
the
think,
Hat Man,
okay,
eh?
yeah, Hat Man, yeah, the
Oh,
Hat
great.
Man. So, and people will say, oh, it's just because he's getting older, thinking about frailty. Well, he's been getting older for a long time. And this is, I just, I know you've shown lots of images of the Hat Man and origins, possibly of Baron Samedi, the Voodoo Shrine.
Yeah.
But he does a lot of prints, Jasper Johns, and skeletons wearing hats. Again, I can't convey to people who are not particularly involved in art, history, art theory, don't read a lot of art. These are really big wig art critics. Peter Shahaldal, I mean, who say all these 24 vertical pictures, standing skeletons, bodies, bones, and sport flat, almost Buster Keatonish hats, comical, but not funny. What is comical about these things? This is really gaslighting us, isn't it? Comical.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
again, is
I'm
comparing
not
him
buying
with
it.
There's comparing him with, this is kind of a bit weird. Skulls, a symbol of death, compared him with the Commedia dell'arte, Pyrrho, as you've talked about, and death is amusing rather than funny. There's nothing funny about his painting. There's nothing humorous. Again, lots of stripes, lots of colour. I think his programming is broken down, but not only that, I think there's some occult aspect that's coming forward that I don't think he was expecting.
Hmm.
So I'll let people pause if they want to read this, but um, that the way they'll describe away these ghosts as Donald Cuthbert, big names in art writing, song and dance man.
It seems like perhaps his inner demons are finally coming through.
Coming
Whatever's
back,
going
yeah,
on,
coming through, and coming to collect something because he has had an incredible. I mean, he's worth about 300 million.
Yeah.
Again, and I just say this, even with hypnotized, like with Leonard Cohen, there's still a price to pay. If you've made the contracts, there'll be a
Well,
price to pay.
I believe the Hatman entity is the basically the lawyer of the spirit world, or like the accountant. He comes to collect. It seems to be the
Yeah,
general theme of his presence. He's there
yeah,
with an authority to receive the payment he's owed, basically.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
you signed a contract. It's time to fulfill your end. I'm here to collect your what you owe. That tends to be the theme of when this character arises in most people's spiritual experiences with him. So if he's just
mm,
painting this guy over and over again, then he's probably like,
yeah.
I don't know, something's
He's got a visitor. Yeah.
yeah,
And also, it may be it doesn't happen so much with people who consciously know they made the contract. It's more
yeah,
with people like, oh no, when you agreed this, when you asked for this, when you said, I'll do anything to get this, you made a contract with me. We have to fulfill
mhm,
now.
yeah,
And another one, it's based of this is he did a whole series called Farley Breaks Down. Again, I can't stress again how many monotypes, how many prints, how many series he's done, but it's really just a version of this Larry Burrows photojournalist painting. But in this one, it's a bit poignant because this is quite late, right, 2015. And why choose this portrait? I mean, uh, in this image. So this is where the corporal is breaking down in tears because a fellow soldier, after a helicopter accident, has just died outside. And he's
mm,
painting this over and over. So it's sort of like an image of regret, confusion,
mm,
and regret. Um, this is him today on the right there. Like frail old man, as you'd expect. I think, well, that's 88. He's older even now. And that's him as a little, sweet little boy. Okay, just to round it all off. So in 2010, he was awarded the US Medal, Presidential Medal of Freedom. Um, and you think, oh, who gets that one? Highest civilian honor in US, awarded by the sitting president. So Trump may decide to give Charlie Kirk posthumously the Medal of Freedom, for a meritorious contribution to security or national interests of the United States, world peace, cultural or other. But it's a lot about public contribution. Again, why is he receiving it when these are the kind of people? This is not under Trump. These are not people Trump, but these are people I can see Obama and Biden. Look who he's given them. I mean, they're human traffickers. Oh, look, Denzel Washington, bottom left.
Yeah, seeing a pattern here.
Oh no. So this is who gets the medal. So what has he done to deserve this? And this was a bit of a clincher. So he received it in 2010. Previously, there were no other artists until 33 years ago. If we go back to 1907, guess who it was? Georgia O'Keeffe. I thought that was, I just about fell over backwards. That there's no other artists. Like, I haven't got all of the art. You can go and look them up on Wikipedia, Pope Francis and, President of Ireland, But you have to go pages and pages and pages and pages back. And the artist, the only artist between, it's Georgia O'Keeffe, 33 years. And then George Biden. And Jasper Johns got a house in the Caribbean, which, got money. What a lovely, warm, sunny place. But it wasn't especially elaborate. I mean, it's a pretty expensive house, but when you consider the kind of money that he had, he lived in several places. He lived also still does in New York. I think he's given this up now. He's too frail to travel. But it was immediately renovated by star architect Philip Johnson. Who else has an island? Let's see. Oh, Epstein, Branson, Keith Richards, Johnny Depp. Again, sorry for the bad resolution. Mick Jagger, Eddie Murphy. In fact, the number of people who own private islands in this vicinity, I mean, they're separated by water, but in this vicinity, you can just look at the names at the left. On the right, they have substantial mansions, include, Mick Jagger, Oprah Winfrey, up until recently, Jasper Johns. And what they say, like what whistleblowers have told us is, all right, all of the dark things that happened maybe still continue, I hope not, on Necker Island, Epstein's, Little St. James Island, really horrific things happening underground, above ground, bad enough, the trafficking of young girls. But underneath, I mean, we've heard everything from, SRA, cloning, programming. A lot of people say programming goes on in these islands. And when you look at people like Beyonce and Jay-Z, I mean, you're two extremely obviously programmed individuals to keep going back for top-ups, or they start to fail. They start to, they drift off into the distance on when they're meant to be watching a basketball game.
Oh, interesting.
And, the Epstein Island, the Ellen playing tribute. Again, there's TV for the rest of us, and then there's somebody, up in the, if not elite, also in the trafficking business, who are, this means something. It's not just like, mocking us. All right, that's one aspect. But it means something why the set has suddenly changed to this. That's telling you this is where you get the adrenochrome from.
I think it is interesting, as you mentioned earlier, like these people who we clearly see have connections to MK Ultra, mind control, abuse. They're clearly double agents. They have a job where they do behind the scenes, which is highly questionable, which they may not even be fully aware that they're doing because of the split alters, which are doing it for them. But they always have a cover job, which is a public figure, often a beloved public figure, which is always fascinating. That's the perfect way to do it, isn't it? That's exactly how you'd hide them, in plain sight, isn't it?
And they're so loved, these people. I mean, honestly, when I think about, I used to think Leonard Cohen was sexy. You know what I mean? Like, you think, I do remember that I thought certain people, you do think certain people in Hollywood, and they're just creeps. They're creepy. Even if they are victims of that, they didn't go looking, they didn't fix it. They at some point, I think God allows the breakthrough. They didn't go fix it. Okay, and just finally, again, also what happens on Little St. James Island. So Zuckerberg. I won't read it aloud. I'll let people read it themselves. This is from his own postings. And the one on the right is just horrific. It's just, again, it seems, I mean, look, you could possibly read it as innocent. It's very hard to read it as innocent. But I'll let people read it themselves. I'm sorry for the resolution. Who are these people? Are they even people? This is what I'm wondering too. And how many Marilyns are they? And how many are they just other people in Marilyn outfits? Are they, how many Zuckerbergs are we up to? Or is he like, you remember he said, when I was human, oh, I am still human. Like, who says that? When I was human, oh, I am still human. Who says that? He said that at one of his releases, one of his interviews. What are these people? They don't age the same as everybody else. Anyway, so it kind of gets where I am. But so something that seemed to be such a little in, this is what I'm saying to people. You begin with reading the imagery and you work back and you think there's way more to the story than meets the eye. One day more stuff will come out. Maybe other people have things to contribute to this, and certainly go looking. And, you could have a lifetime of almost not knowing yourself why the success. Just think, oh no, I was just a really good painter of flags, yes, numbers and targets. And I think, wait on, there's so much more. This is the way art is used. Art is a cover, whether it's the, whatever industry it might be, but visual art as well. So we'll leave it there, I think. And I know there's a bit of sorry, gone over time and never what you can do, but
it's okay.
Yeah,
that was a great presentation.
I think it's sometimes it's in these rabbit holes that with these, what they call loose parts, that people can add their own, information, insight, or go looking. We can flesh out some more of this, but I think the point is MK Ultra is just still exists, but in multiple forms today, and it's very effective. And,
absolutely.
Very hard to wake up from.
I think this is highly relevant to understanding, contextually, what's really going on in the modern art world and who we're really dealing with here, and the type of characters and personalities that we see. Where do they come from? Exactly. Why do they have this meteoric rise to fame, like out of nowhere? When you start seeing in this presentation the massive connections they all have with one another and the similar backstories and the it becomes apparent again, something doesn't quite smell right with any of this, does it? It's all highly questionable and dubious. And I think there's a lot of information in this presentation that people can take away and maybe start their own research with quite easily.
Yeah, I hope so. And not to take, our word for these things. If they question something, how sometimes we get in the comments, someone says, this is not true because I saw once on an interview where he said da-da-da-da. So, okay, now go looking for the rest of the information, Don't take the first or the mainstream line on things as the be all end all. We've got to go looking. And, as we know, that's what the big psyop is that the word conspiracy theorist is a negative, as if, we're not looking there for the truth, for looking at the way this works together, the way putting the pieces of the puzzle together, the world that we live in. And we should be proud of that we're actually investigating, and we don't have a vested interest in keeping the mainstream line on things.
Absolutely. Well, Susan, thanks for this. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Yeah.
We'll have to arrange to get this done again soon.
Sorry about the length.
It's all right. No, we have some ideas, don't we, about where we're going to kind of take this in the future. Maybe some shorter content as well. People love the long form stuff though, so let's not forget. We should probably keep doing something more like this, I think. But I do think some short videos maybe in the works. Stay in touch. We'll get that sorted. But for now,
I've got one more actually. One more, just to round off this series, and
sure.
Unfortunately, talking about the dreaded Marina Abramovich. Okay, but we have to do it. I think we have to.
I think we do. That's going to be probably a rough one.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward.
I'll keep that part brief, but there's other things to talk about. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one. All right, Susan. Thanks for this. I appreciate it.
Take care.
And, take care and God bless.
Yeah, thank you. You too.